Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you could be joining us here tonight with the Bee Guardians group. My name is Allie Pinion, and I'm the owner of Dreaming the Bee. And I like to do workshops teaching kids and adults. I do hive tours. I do other workshops that involve candle making and learning about bees and just I really like to educate my community and myself further about bees and beekeeping, and I like to make ritual candles. And so I'm really excited to be here with all of you tonight. This group is something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, and I hope to do it once a month. And I'm so glad that you all could make it tonight. So, a little bit about myself. I've been beekeeping for 4 years, going into my fifth year, and I started out with Top Bar Hives. I studied under Michael Bush a couple of years ago, visited his farm and was a part of his bee camp and really learned a lot. He's one of the top beekeepers, I think, of the world and does treatment free beekeeping. And he does mostly Langstroth hives, but he has a lot of other different hives, top bar, AZ hives, even has this accordion style hive that looks like a bunch of picture frames put together, which is really cool. And I also have done some workshops with Dr. Leo Sharshakin. I always have trouble saying his last name, but he's really great. And he's out of Missouri, and he specializes in the lay-ins hive. And so I got to learn a lot from him and bring that back to my farm. And I've also studied a relationship and spiritual type beekeeping with Ariella Daly, doing her apprenticeship and taking some of her workshops and courses. So I feel like I have a pretty diverse background in beekeeping adventures, and really cultivating that relationship with bees. I feel like is my speciality. I really like to think about you know how we humans can work with bees in a more symbiotic systems and relationships sort of way, rather than thinking about what can the bees do for us. I try to think about what can we do for each other, and how can we make each other happy, and how can we also make this world a more beautiful and brighter place. Yeah, and so anyway, let's get started. So yes, so questions you can put in the chat box. If I don't get to your question because I'm in the middle of a thought, and I don't end up coming back to it, just put it back in the chat box and I'll get to it again. And then we will also have questions at the end as well. Um, I am going to be posting this meeting to YouTube, and I will send you all a link after the meeting. Sometimes it takes a little while for them to upload, so you will get to probably in the next 2 days or so. So tonight, for this first meeting, I want to do this once a month. I want to talk about different styles of hives. I think that this is something that I know a little bit about because I do work with three different hive styles myself, and I want to add two more hive styles this year to my apiary. And then I also hope to bring in some guest speakers from time to time. And after the meeting, I'm going to send out a survey along with the recording to kind of see what questions you might all have, where you all are in your beekeeping adventures, so that I can cater more towards what you're looking for. I think my next meeting we might talk about tools and different tips and tricks, maybe some books. I love books. I have a nice little bee library. And also, I want this group to remain free. I want it to be accessible to everyone. And I also am asking that if you have the means and you feel called to make a donation, that will help me pay for Zoom. It helps me for my time in building the content for these meetings. And I did send a link to my website that has a page. But like I said, if you don't have to this is a free meeting, so you don't have to donate. Um, anyway, so why am I calling this a bee guardians group? I feel like instead of beekeeper, when I do call myself a beekeeper and a bee guardian, so I feel like when we say beekeeper, we don't really keep bees because they are still inherently wild, and that's part of what's so intriguing about bees is they are still wild. We try to domesticate them. We've actually had relationships with bees for as long, we meaning humans, for as long as we've had relationships with dogs. And I am a huge dog lover and a huge bee lover, so I find that to be just incredible. And we can find about bees through many different religious texts. They've been on all different continents. There's many different creation stories involving bees from all different cultures. So I call this Bee Guardian group because I am not a commercial beekeeper. I do not make my living solely on commercial products from bees like honey and wax. I do make candles, and I also source some of the wax for my candles from other like minded beekeepers because I don't produce enough. I only have anywhere from 20 to 25 hives at a time. Um, so I call this a bee guardians group because I'm more focused on the person who wants to be in relationship to bees rather than the person who wants to produce honey. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all because I love honey and I collect it everywhere I go from all sorts of places. And I've even got my mom and dad collecting me honey, and they've been collecting honey from themselves too. It's a fun thing to do. So that's why I am using the name Bee Guardians Group, because I'm targeting the audience of the person who's wanting to build relationship with bees and not go into a full-time or part-time business of producing honey. I'm not your person if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking for, a group to expand your relationship with the natural world and your relationship with bees and other pollinators, then this is your group. And I find that a bee guardianship is about, living and working and noticing the seasons and what's happening around you. And by doing this, you can also learn more about yourself, and you can learn more about the honey. I feel like honey is a library, and when the clover's blooming or the linden is blooming and we have a little taste of that, it's a taste of the season. So I really think the bees help keep us in that space. And I just want to say, I think I have all of you muted, but if you're not muted, be sure to look in the left corner of your screen and mute yourself. Um, so I think that we are guardians when we think outside of ourselves and we work to protect and grow the relationship with ourselves and the things around us. Um, I recognize, like I said, this doesn't work for everyone, and I don't believe that there are any type of beehives or styles of beekeeping that are better than another type. I think it's all about, you know, what options that you personally have, whether that be financing, whether that be your physical ability. It varies, and there's no right or wrong and no good or bad. This is all depending on what works for you and what your goals are. So let's see. One of the reasons why I really wanted to invite kids tonight is I had a couple of kids back in, it was the hot summer this year, and one of them asked, "Do the bees feel? Can the bees sense?" And I was just blown away by that because I was like, well, actually, yes, they can. And let me tell you why. We've heard about elephants mourning their dead. Well, when a queen dies in a hive, the sound of the hum of the hive actually changes and makes this kind of mourning sound. And, I hadn't ever really thought about that in that way until this kid asked me this question. And I get all these really wonderful questions from kids. And actually, my apprentice, he just turned 11 and he is amazing. And I swear he teaches me more. He's on here now, but I'm hoping he'll come one day and talk to y'all as well. And I find that horizontal hives are much more kid friendly because you don't have to lift heavy boxes. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I want to start out this group like I start out all of my hive tours. And as a bee guardian, we are working in a bee centric way. So we're not thinking, oh, I'm human, I can come do, whatever I want. We think about, oh, the bees are another living being, so I want to approach them with respect. And the way that I approach my bees is going to be different than the way you approach yours, and not saying that it is not respectful. I'm just trying to put the bug in your ear to when you approach a beehive to really think about that. You don't just go and open somebody's front door and walk right down in. You knock on the door. And some people actually knock on their beehives, but a knock can be a bit abrupt and a little bit disturbing. And so one of the things I like to do is to kind of slowly go up to a beehive. And I'll put my hands on top of the beehive, and then I will take 3 breaths, and on the out breath I will hum. And the reason why I do that, there's several reasons. The bees are humming, and that's actually part of their medicine. Um, but is because when you hum, you activate your vagus nerve. It causes you to relax and to be more present in your body. And it's kind of like an offering to the bees, like, I see you, I'm coming in. And bees don't actually have ears. So they don't really hear like we hear. What they do is they sense vibration. And so by us humming, they can sense that vibration, and we don't exactly know how they're sensing that. We think it's through their antenna and their feet, but I just find that to be a really a nice way to calm myself, because opening a beehive can be really intense. I mean, bees can be flying out everywhere, but if you enter that beehive in a calm state and you've let them know that you're there, you didn't just barge into their door, then they are going to be a bit more gentle. And so I want to start this meeting that way. And if you feel called, I want you to hum on the out breath. We're going to take 3 breaths. And if you want to hum on the out breath, if not, just take 3 deep breaths. And then we're going to close our eyes, kind of settle into our bodies. Take a deep breath in. Yeah, and I feel like that's a really nice way to really get into your body, make you feel present, and to Just kind of let the bees know that you're there. And they have found that bees do recognize faces. After 5 times of seeing someone, they recognize your face. And after a few times, they begin to recognize your smell. So it's really important to not wear any like perfumes or anything like that. I remember not too long ago, I was laying outside and I think I had my hands above my head and the bee landed in my armpit. And I was like, oh my goodness. I hope they are landing here out of love. They didn't sting me, but they're checking out our smells. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go into the portion of talking about different hive styles. My goal is not to produce a lot of honey. My goal is more about relationships and kind of spiritual growth and growth with the land and the seasons. So I like to catch mostly wild bees. I purchase a few colonies from some local beekeepers who I know are doing, treatment free, or they are, doing like hygienic bees, which basically means that the bees will groom mites and different things off themselves. So I'm looking for bees that can do really well on their own. And I feel like that is the way to a better, healthier bee. So I am first going to talk about the Langstroth hive. And I believe that most people know what the Langstroth hive is. It's the typical boxes that you see on the side of the road. A lot of times, kind of look like file cabinets stacked on one on top of the other. And I'll give you a little brief history about the Langstroth hive. I think that it's really cool. I mean, not well. So Lorenzo Langstroth was a minister, and he was the one who kind of standardized the beehive and came up with the Langstroth hive. And he worked with bees because that was a way of treating his depression. And that's one of the reasons that I work with bees, is to kind of bring this other outlet into life that is beautiful, and a way to battle depression or anxiety, or just bringing myself back into my body. And I think that's so cool, that how like one of the fathers of one of the beehives that most people use, he recognized that bees bring us to a healthier state, and not just a healthier state of physical body, but of our consciousness as well. So he came up with the Langstroth hive, and that's the one that you see mostly. And it's a movable frame hive. And what he discovered is that I'm going to switch over to a screen share. I hate to have a slideshow, but in order for me to show y'all some of these things, I think it's important. So let's see. All right. So here is, oh, well, I'm not very good at this slideshow thing. You can see. So here is the Langstroth hive. You can see here on I guess it's the left side of the screen. I just made a split, so I put the two boxes close together, and a split is when you divide the hive into two. There are many different ways of doing this, but have a queen on one side and a queen egg on the other, and they become two hives, and that's why I have them so close there. So what Lorenzo figured out is that is a space that bees will not fill with propolis, and propolis is this sticky substance that you see here on the side, and they will not fill this with propolis if it is between a certain like 1/4 of an inch and 3/8 of an inch. And what they'll do is kind of use this as their like bee highway. And they will yeah, they'll use that as their bee highway. And so when he discovered this, he discovered that we could have movable frames. Well, what we used to have before that were these baskets. I know my screen is pretty small, but these are called skep hives, and anyone could weave these baskets. And so there were a lot of people that had these basket style hives, but not everyone knew how to harvest the honey from these hives, and a lot of times they would end up killing the bees. And so Langstroth was looking for a way to have movable frames so that they could take the honey out of the hive and not have to kill the bees. So this happened in the 1850s, and some people caught on to this and realized that, you know, we could raise bees at a much larger scale if we just had these movable frames. And so that's when commercial beekeeping came about. And of course, whenever you put in large populations of any sort of animal or insect, then you're going to bring about pest and disease. And so that, you know, caused American foul brood to kind of come about, and the commercial beekeepers put pressure on the government to make sure that hives were inspectable, because they didn't want to lose their livelihood. You know, they didn't want their bees to die. And so then sadly, that's when these basket and log hives became illegal in a lot of places. And that made it to where not everyone could keep bees anymore. And so this standardized hive that Langstroth made became the main model, and was really the only hive you could get in the United States, at least for a long period of time, up until recently, really. And when it became a commercial style hive, they started to change the dimensions of the wood. So, you know, it went from 1.5 inches to 3/4 of an inch, and that leaves the bees with less insulation. And so you can see that the brown bars that go across are the frames. So frame. And then on the side, there's a little bit of white under all that propolis, which we also call bee glue. That is the 3/4 inch side of the hive. So it's not really well insulated. But there are some things that you can do to kind of help them deal with that not being as insulated, such as, you know, providing them with some shade. You can, in the wintertime, I do what we call a quilt box on top, and it's just an empty super. Supers are those white boxes, and then I'll put a pillowcase with wood chips, and then I'll put this stuff. It's called Reflectex on there. And what this does, you can only do this on the hives that have the bee space in between the frames. And what this does is it collects the moisture from the bees breathing in the hive, and then the bees can go up and they can drink the water off of the top of here, and it won't cause a mold issue on frames let me show you, such as the top bar hive. They don't have any bee space, they all touch, and so it doesn't work in those. It causes mold inside the hive. Okay, so when we go with the Langstroth hives, I have moved most of my Langstroth hives over to 8 frame. Um, and what you'll find, at least in our around our co-op here, our local co-op, our local farm store, they only have 10 frames. And you know, those a deep 10 frame box, which you'll see on the left is a deep, and the one on top of that is a medium. They could weigh 100 pounds, and you know, you're lifting from the all the way from the ground, and so that is really heavy, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to go with a top bar hive. um and so then so what I have done is I went all 8 frames, except I have two that are 10 frame. And The 8 frames are still heavy. I mean, you can get 40 to 60 plus pounds on those, but they're not quite as heavy. And then when you think about the bees and their propolis, which is tree resins, which is really sticky, when you're lifting on that and you still have some places without propolis, then it's just really heavy. So that's one of the things that I think you should take into consideration when deciding on what type of hive you can build. But a lot of people get into Langstroth hives because they are passed down equipment. And if you get free equipment and it looks good and you sanitize it, go for it. Um, so you can make the Langstroth hives a little bit more bee friendly by doing the insulation things that I was talking about. But also, one of the things that you can do is not choose to not use a queen excluder. And what the queen excluder does is it's a like a mesh or hardware cloth kind of thing that goes across the top of the inside of the hive in between two of the boxes to keep the queen from laying in the box above. And if you just allow her to lay where she wants, then she'll eventually stop laying in the honey areas, and then you can harvest those. And another thing that you can do is to keep your frames with no foundation in them. And how you can keep the bees from growing comb all crazy. So here's a picture of one of the people that I was helping. That you see the frames are going one way, and then there's honeycomb going another way. Someone was managing this hive and they forgot to put some frames back in, and so the bees drew all the comb the opposite way. But it was cool because we just removed all the comb and crushed it and had some really nice honey. But by doing foundationless, you can make it more bee friendly. A lot of people don't go foundationless because they want more honey. And basically, what that means is that when bees produce honey, when bees produce wax, they do have to eat a lot of honey. And so it can reduce your honey production up to 20%. I don't really feel like that's noticeable. And bees are going to release wax from their wax glands, no matter if they're making comb or not. So I feel like it's kind of, like a healthier part of the process of the bee, their life. They want to build the wax, the comb. And especially if you just call it a swarm, they are comb making machines. Um, so another good reason for working with Langstroth hives is it's much easier to find a mentor. A lot of people are working these Langstroth hives, and so I know 4+ years ago when I was starting out with top bar hives, I didn't know anybody who was doing them. I was going to local bee groups and they were laughing at me saying I wasn't going to get any honey out of it, and it just made me feel really uncomfortable. So it's much easier to find people who are working with Langstroth hives to mentor you. Um, and the cheapest equipment is Langstroth boxes. I mean, if you want to get into a Langstroth hive, you're looking at less than $200 going to purchase one. If you want to go and purchase a lay-ins or another type of horizontal or top bar hive, you're looking at three, four, $500. So unless you build your own. So yeah, so that's another reason. And also a lot of the equipment is standardized for Langstroth. So like if you're trying to feed your bees, or you want to put some mite catchers or beetle traps or anything like that, they're much more catered to the Langstroth hive. And then if you want to save your comb and sling the honey out of your comb, a lot of the honey extractors are only made for Langstroth hives. There are some made for lay-ins hives, and they're very expensive, but I honestly prefer crushed comb honey. and you don't get to, reuse that comb, but honeycomb bioaccumulates. Like it will hold toxins. And so that's why they tell you to, only leave your comb in your hive, up to 3 years and then get it out of there because it accumulates chemicals. We don't live in a world now that there's not chemicals coming from somewhere or the other, even if we're on an organic farm. I mean, it's in the atmosphere and it's collecting. Um, some of the cons of Langstroth hives would be the heavy lifting. Even if you get the 8 frame, you're still lifting pretty heavy boxes. Um, and, if you are working a Langstroth hive, you have to take off basically the entire roof of the beehive. So you can see in this picture, when I took off the box, there was, all these bees exposed. Well, one of the ways that you can combat that is by using a piece of canvas. One of my teachers, Ariella Daly, told me about this, which I thought was a great idea. Using a piece of canvas to cover up the sections of that Langstroth hive that you're not using. So if you're working one side of the hive, you can put a piece of canvas over while to keep it dark, because the bees and the queen like to be in darkness. So another one of the cons is you tend to crush some bees sometimes when you're putting a box on top of another box. It's just really, really hard to do that without crushing bees. I mean, you can use your smoker to kind of smoke the bees away, but sometimes you're going to squish some bees. And then everybody always asks me about the flow hive. And I have never worked with a flow hive. I have seen one, but it wasn't actually in use. And so I can't really give you a definitive answer on that. But personally, I don't like using plastic foundation, and the flow hive is plastic, but one good thing about it that I can see is you're not disturbing the bees when you get the honey out. But I just don't like the idea of hot honey in the hot sun in a plastic comb. But like I said, you're not disturbing the bees as much. All right. I can't see the question, the chat box. So let's see. Oh wait, I found it. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to top bar hives. Okay, so this was my first hive. And this one's really close to my heart. And my husband and I actually went around town and found pallets on the side of the road, and we built this top bar hive. I have since then built my top bar hives with 2-inch lumper, but this was just a really fun project. I had been studying bees for about 5 years before I actually started beekeeping, and one of my best friends, one day he called me and he was like, "Do you have your hive ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" He was like, "I have you a swarm." And he just showed up at my house with some bees, and that was just the best day. And so this hive was Rose, named after my great grandmother. And I learned so much from this hive, and I'm so grateful for these bees. They actually left last year. They absconded. I'm not sure if they had mites or what it was, but they were a really great colony. I really loved working with them, and they taught me a lot. And that's one of the things that you're going to learn with your first set of bees is, I ask them all the time to give me grace, because learning not to smush them. You're going to smush them a few times. You're going to make the wrong decision sometimes, and they are just so amazing in helping you learn how to work with them. And if you just sit with them and listen to them and allow them to teach you, they can just teach you so much. And you'll never forget your first set of bees. I cried and cried and cried when they left. But yeah, so The top bar hive actually came about, well, it's really quite old, but it came to the US through the Peace Corps. And Les Crowder, let's see, I have one of his books. Oh, I forgot to show y'all I'll take a little back step. I'm going to show y'all a couple of books for the Langstroth Hive. This is The Backyard Beekeeper by Kim Flodham. And this is just a really basic overall good book for the beginning beekeeper. It does have a little bit about top bars in here, but just a really good overall book for getting started. And then this is Michael Bush's book. This is quite a thick book. It's actually 3 volumes in one, and he does have all this information for free on his website. He is an amazing man. And I'm actually he put a picture of me in the newest edition of this book, which was pretty cool when I was on his farm. But yeah, he's amazing. He puts all this information for free. His website is bushfarms.com. And under my resources page on my website, you can go right to his stuff. And I also have all these books on my resources page on my website that you can go back to and find from there. Um, so yes, so Les Crowder's Top Bar Beekeeping book. It's a really great book, very very small, good read. I think he also gives you plans in here, but I recommend if you want to build your own top bar hive to go ahead and purchase Phil Chandler's book. But I do believe he puts, oh, he does. He puts his plans for free online. And I also have a link to that on my website through resources. And then he does this. This is the book that I recommend from him. It's called Managing the Top Bar Hive Balanced Beekeeping 2, that you have as a reference book for your top bar hive. He has lots of great YouTube videos. Les Crowder has some great YouTube videos too. Biobees.com is Phil Chandler's book, and he's great. I mean, Phil Chandler's website, and he's great. Learned a lot from him. But my first book was Les Crowder's. Those are the free plans for the top bar are on my website if you go through the resources. So if you look at the top bar hive, you can tell that it's actually half of a honeycomb, which is really cool. And that is kind of the premise of the shape of this hive. So the angles are 120-degree angles. And the idea of this is that the lenses of the bee are hexagons. So the bees actually see through this hexagonal lens. They don't see like we see. And so if we build this home for them in the design of the way they see the world, then it's more bee friendly, and it's like a hollowed out log that's fallen over. A lot of these are in Africa are suspended in trees, suspended by rope in trees, and they have these top bars on top. And so I forgot to mention that one of the cons of the Langstroth hive is you have to store the boxes and you have to store the frames. So you're storing a lot. And then on the top bar hive, all you have to store are these little things, these little top bars. And you can store those in a box or a bucket. I've stored all of mine in 2 5-gallon buckets. So, and by storing, I mean in the winter, you're going to take some out of the hive so that you don't have wax moths that start to come in, and because they will actually start to eat through the wood and eat through the comb that's not in use. So you'll take out the excess honey and either share it with other hives if your hives are mite free, or eat it yourself, so that the mites don't. I actually like to harvest honey in the spring, when the dandelions are blooming and I know the bees have plenty of forage. But when you have a lot of hives and you have more honey than you can spread between your hives, And if you don't take some of that honey off of your hives, the wax moths are going to come in because the bees are in a cluster and they can't defend it. Then, you need to pull those off for the winter. Okay, so I think top bar hives are a great starting point. And the reason why I say this is because they do have a learning curve. And I find that people who start out working with top bar hives versus the Langstroth hives, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can show y'all what I'm talking about. They will learn to hold their frames differently. So when you have a top bar, you can't, this is empty, that's why I can do this. You can't hold your frame like this. So you can't expect it like this. You can only hold it this way, or you can hold it this way. You only have different ways you can hold it. Because if you hold it like this, or at any kind of angle, the weight of the honey is going to fall over. So inherently, working a top bar hive teaches you to be so much more gentle and so much more caring about every comb and every little bit of structure that the bees build. And that's what I was talking about, how different hives will encourage you to work different ways with your bees. So when you have a Langstroth frame, I don't have any comb in this one, sorry. You can hold it this way or whatever way because it's secured, especially if you have wire in it. Now, if you have a little bit of comb in here and it's not attached on all the sides, then you don't want to be holding it like this either. Okay, let me go back to my slideshow. Okay, and so yeah, so the different hives will kind of teach you more about how to work in relationship with the bees. So, like I said, the top bar hive keeps us being a little bit more gentle. And in the right side corner, you can see that there's this gate on the front of, this is actually a nucleus box of mine, and you can see where the bees have propolized every little spot except for one little hole because they're going to control the airflow. Well, in this image of the top bar hive that has the turquoise and the little crystal in the front, you can see I put the holes on the front of the hive. Well, there are many different people who say different things about where the hole should be. What I found is that the bees actually won't draw the comb all the way down because they want to have it cut off so that they can control the airflow. And so what I've learned now is to put the holes along the long side of the hive. And that, so when I have it along the long side of the hive, it's lining up with the frames. So basically what's happening is the holes are going to be along with the length of the comb versus going up against the comb, and so they can better control the airflow through there. But you can do whatever you feel is right for you. That's kind of what I feel like hot and humid Mississippi, they are able to deal with airflow a lot better. And also I like to put the holes a couple of inches off of the bottom. That way the debris and different things can fall down. And if in the wintertime, if there happens to be some dead bees in the hive, it doesn't cover the entrance where the bees can't get out because there's dead bees in front. So people say that top bar hives are produce less honey, and that most people don't go with top bar for commercial honey production, but there are commercial top bar hive beekeepers out there, and there are commercial skep hive, that basket hive I showed you, beekeepers out there. Oh, and back to the holes. So what I do is I drill those holes about 3/4 inches so that I can fit a wine cork in to close up different holes when I don't want them all open. But I think I'm going to actually change all of them to this bee gate that you see here, that circle with the holes, because I feel like they'll still be able to control the airflow, but not have to worry about guarding that entrance. Well, okay, there we go. So you can see in the center, there's a hole in the comb. And what that is another one of, that's their bee space. That's their traffic, their highway that they've made through there. And some of the top bar combs, the top bars that you'll buy in stores, they will have holes drilled along the top of the top bars for bees to kind of use as their highway. But I don't do that in mine. I just allow them to build their own highways. So you'll see that I'm examining this comb by holding it, that up and down way, because I don't want, it's not being braced by a frame on all sides, and it doesn't have wire reinforcements in the center. And another important thing to do on your top bar hives is people will, get some wax and put a string and wax to kind of give them a guide, or they will put a popsicle stick to kind of get them going a certain direction. And the reason why we do that is because they will do a thing called cross combing, and with cross combing, you have to fix that, and it can be kind of a mess. But I think that we get to harvest a little honey sometimes when we get a little taste if there's some cross combing happening. And someone asked about specific types of wood. So Mississippi, we are the pine state. So I'm using pine, but if you have access to cedar, that's a really great wood that's going to last a long time. And also think about the type of paint that you're going to use. I've noticed that when I don't use eco paints, that the bees will actually pick the paint off of the entrance. So a lot of people use tung oil or different oils on their hives. Um, but um, yeah, whatever wood that you can really get your hands on will be good. But if you have cedar, that's a really great one. I manage some cedar hives for a friend, and they are some really lovely hives. So yeah, okay, so here you can see what I was talking about earlier about when I open up space in the top bar hive, the bees are not really disturbed. When I do hive tours with the top bar or the lay-ins, with people who actually have Langstroth hives, they're like, whoa, your bees are so gentle. And I'm like, well, they're gentle because I'm not taking their whole roof off. And a lot of times when it's colder and you're opening up the hives, you can crack propolis and it makes loud pops. Well, I don't have to do that with top bars. And so they're more gentle because I'm not lifting their whole roof off. And so I feel like these two pictures are a really good way to show that, you know, the different ways of the bees not being disturbed. You can see a bunch of bees on top there and very few on the side. Okay. One of the cons of top bar hives is that if you're going to purchase a nucleus hive, and a nucleus hive is a small starter hive, which you can see on the right side of the image. And so if you have a top bar, you're going to have to cut your nucleus hive that you purchased and put it into your top bar hive box. So really the best way to start your top bar hive is to get a swarm. But if not, you can use some gardening shears and a knife. Hey Luna, I see your question. I love you too. All right. And I love to put observation windows in my beehives. And one of the reasons is that I don't have to go in and disturb the hives. They don't cost that much more extra. I don't use tempered glass. I just get, the cheaper glass that, because I'm not really knocking on it or anything. And this is really great to show kids, to help people kind of get more introduced to the bees before actually getting into the hive. This kind of tells me they're honey stores without bothering them. I can also see their bellies, their underbellies. And one of the things that's beautiful about that is then we can tell where if they have varroa mites because they usually hide under their bellies. So I'm getting low on time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. I can get real long-winded when it comes to bees. So here are some of my lay-ins hives. I wish that I had done all of mine with the 3/4 inch holes, but I did those long linear openings, and they've been really difficult to try to cover up in the winter or if I'm doing a split. So I did, and the Layens hive is a French style hive, and a couple of good books for this. You can find it on my website under the resources, but Keeping Bees in Horizontal Hives. And then there's another one, Keeping Bees with a Smile. And those are really great reference books. You can build these by yourself, and there are free plans. And you can go through the resources on my website to find that. It's horizontalhives.com. And you this hive does have frames, as you can see me holding up a frame, but that's all you have to store. So just the frames, no added boxes. And there are instructions for 14 frames. I do 19. I have about mm, 18 of these at 19 frames. I think I'm going to go to 14 frames from now on. I did 19 frames so that I could do a split within the lay-ins hive. Out of the 5 splits that I did this year, only one of them didn't work out. So, that's really great to be able to do it inside the same hive. And then I have observation windows on the backs of all these, which are really super nice. Let's see. So you can see here the bees drawing them out. Here we go. I've got a layers frame here too. And you'll see halfway down, after about 11 inches, their bees will start to curve their comb just for the engineering to be able to hold that weight. And so, you know, that's why we put that bar across when we're going foundationless. But Dr. Leo on his Horizontal Hives website, he does sell Italian foundation that is, I believe, has been tested to be chemical free or, under a certain amount of chemicals. I use concrete blocks for the base of my hives because they're easy to kind of move around. They're not too heavy. I mean, they're pretty heavy, but they get me, 2 of them get me a great height, and I'm 5'4". Yeah, I'm 5'4". So 2 concrete blocks stacked on top of each other. So I do 4 on each hive, are a great height for me. One negative about these are when they're heavy because you use 2-inch wood. And so when you're moving them, I can move one by myself when it's empty, but they are kind of heavy to move. So if you have Langstroth hives and you want to go to Layens hives, you can use your mediums. And this is a picture out at Dr. Leo's farm that I took of his he calls it Langstroth to Layens frames. And then you can see on the right side there's a pillowcase in the hive, and that's kind of how I overwinter. If I had sheep's wool, good access to sheep's wool over here, I would have put sheep's wool in there. But wood chips with a pillowcase is a really nice way to keep that dead air from inside the hive. Let's see. Yeah, so you don't have to store any boxes. You just have to store frames. You can convert your Langstroth to Layens hives. So that's a really good thing. The cons are that they are heavy and you do have to store frames. If you have to keep bees in the full sun, I feel like this is one of the good options because it's so thick and the frames are pretty deep, and I feel like the bees can control the temperature inside the hive. Once it gets too deep, the bees aren't able to control temperature, but this is about 16 inches, so I think they're doing well. Someone asked about why do I move Why do I move hives? I actually people I guess hire me to put beehives out on their property, and so I will come and put a beehive out at your house, and I will take care of them. And if you want to learn about them while I'm there, you can do that. And so that's why I'm moving them around. Um, yeah, and I like to put observation windows in all of these. I found the bees are really doing well in them. Some bee colonies, if they're larger colonies, around 2 or 3 pounds, they will fill that whole 19 frames up, and some are smaller and they don't. But you can put a follow board and keep your colony size smaller, but it's better to have a smaller hive than a bigger hive so the bees can patrol it. So, I still have more to talk about, but I'm running out of time. Does anyone have any questions? I don't even know if I've made it to where people can talk on this or not, but I'm not the best at working with Zoom. So, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is, you know, becoming a more bee centric beekeeper is, first thinking about, oh, somebody has this question about swarm traps. I did used to use swarm traps. I used to put up about, I had 10 swarm traps up, and I found that I ended up catching more bees by people calling me, telling me to go get this swarm than I did through the traps. And so I put up traps in certain places that I know I'm going to catch bees every year, but it's a lot of work. I am so lucky that my beloved is a tree climber and he will put up traps in trees for me. But not everyone is that lucky. But if you have a swarm trap, and that's awesome, put up a swarm trap. Ask someone if you can put one on their land. I think only about 30% of swarms actually make it in the wild because weather might come in and before they figured out a place to sorry what some bad weather might have come in before they figured out a place to live, and so they all might perish. So I try to collect every swarm I can. They say that swarms the size of a football or bigger are going to survive, and if they're the size of smaller than that, then they're not going to. This year I was called to get a swarm the size of a softball, and I am happy to tell you that it is still living. I have had to give it some honey and brood from another colony twice this year, but it is still living. So I did add some bees to it, but it is still living. So, you know, I I try to do that. Someone mentioned that in Australia they leave their lay-ins hive stationary, and yes, I would. My first choice would be to leave my lay-ins hive stationary as well because they are heavy. Um, Typically, what I'll do a lot of times with a client is if they tell me it in time enough, I will go set up a beehive at their place and then bring a smaller swarm in one of my nucleus hives or my swarm boxes over and move them. But yes, if you're going to put up a lay-ins hive or even a top bar hive, they're more stationary. If you want to be moving your hives around and are more migratory, then you definitely want to go with the lay-ins. Or I shouldn't say definitely. You might think about going with lay-ins. Um, Okay, so someone said that they just put out a box on their property and hoping a swarm might call it home. Well, there are some ways that you can kind of bait the bees to come to your hive. You can do that by putting some old comb in there. You could get some propolis and rub it along the walls in there. You could get some lemongrass essential oil and use just a few little dots or drops. I like to put it on a piece of cardboard or an egg carton and put like 2 drops, and that can be a swarm lure. So there are ways that you can call the bees in. And I also just like to put it out into the universe. Hey, bees, I have got a beautiful, warm, nice home. I am going to give you lots of love and, plant you lots of flowers. And I've got a great space for you. And, going out into the yard and saying that. And who knows, maybe they'll come. And one other book that I really love, it's called At the Hive Entrance, by H. Storch. And I think this is also a really good book for kids, and you can kind of make a little bit of a game out of it. And by saying what I mean by for kids is that on one side of the book, it has the observation. So you're standing outside the hive and you see the bees on the front of the hive going up and down and up and down. Well, you can look at that in this book and then kind of see what that means on this side of the book. And so you can make it a game by everyone trying to guess what that means. Or you might see the bees flying around in figure eights on the outside of the hive. And then you can go look it up in the book and see what that means. So this book teaches you to work outside of your hive. And that's another one of the reasons why I really like the Top Bar and the Layens hive, is because they don't require as much management. And you can learn so much by just sitting outside your hive and watching your bees. And I feel like that's one of the more important and informative ways of learning from your bees. Now, in the beginning, you're going to want to go in there every couple of weeks just so that you know what you're looking for. But once it starts getting the heat of the summer and there's less forage, you really want to leave them alone, even if you're still learning. So by looking at the outside of the hive, then you can be like, oh, they're bringing in pollen, they're bringing in honey, you can really tell what's going on. So I'm at 7 o'clock. I really want to be mindful of everyone's time. If you have any quick questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll stay after a little. But I just want to say I'm so grateful for all of you. I love talking about bees, and this was just a joy for me to be able to get on here and be thankful that all of you showed up. And yeah, I'm so very grateful. And yeah, if anyone wants to stay on and ask questions, but if you need to go, then you're welcome to go. I oh, I got 2 more books real quick. The Song of Increase by Jacqueline Freeman. So this is one of those books that you don't even have to be a beekeeper to love. And she's talking about relationships with bees. She talks about, I guess, from the voice of the bee. And so she is just amazing. And I've read this book twice, and I'll probably read it another 8 times. I've given this book away. Great book. And then if you're into treatment-free beekeeping or Darwinian beekeeping, Thomas Seeley is your guy. And The Lives of Bees is really great. This is his new book. And he talks about why bees do what they do in the wild, why they like a certain cavity size. Well, actually, we don't really know why bees do anything, but he has some great guesses and decades of research. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, he has lots of free talks on YouTube. And someone asked, how do they make friends with local beekeepers? Is there a secret handshake or password? I love this. I love you too, Victoria. And so this is one of the reasons why I actually started doing this, is because beekeepers meetings are tough, especially if you're starting with a different style hive. But I encourage you to look up your local beekeepers association. And I think I also have that under my resources, where you can find it all across the US, I believe. But try to go to one of your local beekeepers groups. A lot of them are moving on to Zoom and online. and, just talk, ask questions, contact local people who are selling queens or nucleus hives. Sometimes, if you buy one from them, they might be willing to help you, mentor you a little bit. You can also find groups on Facebook, local groups. And I've learned so much from local people on Facebook. People can be, super generous with their knowledge in that way. But yeah, it does feel a bit intimidating going to local beekeeping groups. I went to 5 different groups across my state trying to find one that I felt like was a fit for me. So that's kind of why I've been wanting to start my own for the last 2 years. But, don't let them discourage you. Just try different ones. And a lot of times they have great guest speakers. And I think that once you put it out there that you want to meet with other beekeepers and want to learn, then, you all come together at some point. I mean, when I go to the post office, they're like, "Hey, bee lady." So, like, get you a bee t-shirt and, a bee hat, and just really put it out there that you love bees and you love pollinators. And, I think that you're going to build some relationships with people. Um, yeah. Is there any other questions? And yeah, again, I'm so grateful for all of you. This just really fills my heart very much. Well, all right. Well, like I said, if you need any of the free plans, I also have links to a couple of websites that in the US that make beehives, Layens hives, and Langstroth hives that you can order from. And oh, yes, Susan, don't be afraid to walk away from discouragement. Find like minds. Yes, so very much. Yes. And Susan also offers some really great online beekeeping courses, Zen Beekeeping. So you can check her out as well. Um, she has Butts Bees Organics on Instagram, so I bet you could find her website from there. But yeah, so, you know, um, I thank you all so very much. And yeah, I got free plans through resources. You can buy some hives online if you're looking for those. I also have made in so the 19 frame, if you want that and you want the new instructions for that. So on Dr. Leo's website, he only does 14 frames. I have all the conversions for the 19 frames. So just email me. And oh, yes, John with Natural Beekeeping Tasmania.com. Yes, and he's also in Instagram. So yes, we got a lot of great folks on here with us tonight. And love you, Mom. And yeah, so check out those links. And yeah, thank you very much. I feel like I need to kind of start a group. I don't want to do Facebook because that feels so very odd to me. But if anybody can think of a platform where we can, you know, still discuss things together and share our resources. Telegram, okay, I'll have to look at that up. But share our resources with one another, like Natural Beekeeping Tasmania and Susan's Butts Bees, that we can, share our resources in the in between these meetings. I'll be thinking about that if that's something y'all are interested in. Yes. Well, everyone, have a great night and be blessings and be well. Thank you.